Let's talk nutrition in 3 minutes or less. First, we're starting out with carbohydrates because I've been hearing all the people talk about sugars recently. And guess what? All carbohydrates are sugars. So let's talk about them. And the way that they're chemically formed is going to impact how our body breaks them down, how it digests that, and how our body responds. So let's talk about the three different kinds. First one we're going to talk about are monosaccharides. So monosaccharides are single sugar units. What are they? Glucose, fructose, and galactose. Because they're already broken down and they're single sugar units, our body can absorb them really quickly, which means they're going to increase our blood sugar very rapidly when eaten alone. When do we consume them? Ideally, is going to be before training or in the middle of training or in the middle of a game. Why? Because again, they're going to increase that blood sugar, give us really quick energy without creating a lot of GI distress. These things are good for things like athletes or someone who's going to go have an intense workout. When you're going to eat them, so what do we find them in? Fruits, honey, some sweeteners. When you consume them outside of any training, they're best to have with protein and or fat, because that's going to slow down the digestion of it so it doesn't impact your blood sugar as rapidly when you consume it with those other things, right? So those are monosaccharides. Our disaccharides are our second ones, and they're exactly that. They're two saccharides or two sugar units that are bound together. So we have sucrose, which is glucose plus fructose bound together. We find that in table sugar. We can also find it naturally in some fruits. All right. Our second one we're going to talk about is lactose. It is glucose plus galactose that are bound together. We're going to find that in dairy products. And then we're going to have maltose, which is the third one. That's going to be glucose bound to glucose. We typically find that in like grains, right? Our body requires an enzyme in order to break down those two saccharides or those two sugar units apart in order for our body to be able to digest, absorb, and utilize those carbohydrates effectively. If we're missing an enzyme that actually breaks apart those two sugar units, that's when we notice GI distress. So, for example, if you're missing lactase, which is an enzyme that breaks apart lactose into glucose and galactose independently, if you do not have that enzyme, you're going to notice GI distress. Why? Because lactose in and of itself is too big of a molecule for our body to be able to absorb. Therefore, we're going to have a GI reaction to it. So there you go. Our third type of carbohydrate is going to be a polysaccharide. Now, these are actually long strings or long connections of glucose units. So starch and fiber are two types of polysaccharides, right? Fiber is a carbohydrate, but fiber actually acts a little bit differently than starch does. So we'll kind of save that for another one to go into it. When we talk about starches, it's long strings of glucose actually bound together. We're going to find it in things like our starchy vegetables. So potatoes, peas, corn. We're also going to find it in things like beans and legumes. Those naturally occur in there. Our body is going to take a little bit longer to break down starch because there are so many different glucose molecules bound together. So it needs to take those different enzymes to essentially chop it up or break them apart for our body to be able to absorb them and utilize them. The starch is still going to give us some energy, right? Because like that's what starch does, or that's what glucose does, but it's not going to be as fast as some other types of carbohydrates based on how our body needs to break it down and absorb it. So there's your nutrition in 3 minutes or less.